football, college football. I'm your host, Grayson Grunhafer, and today let's start with the biggest storyline in my eyes coming out of the weekend, or at least one of the biggest, and that's USC knocking off UCLA. Big reason why it's such a big moment was USC clinched their spot in the Pac-12 championship. I think a lot of people are now kind of just penciling them in a little bit as a college football playoff contender or a team that's going to get there. I've heard that a lot as well, and I think looking forward for USC, there's still some tough challenges ahead. We're going to get to their game against Notre Dame very shortly, and of course the Pac-12 championship, in which things are still very cloudy in the Pac-12, whether it's going to be Oregon, Washington is still in the mix. Utah is still somewhat in the mix as well. But at the end of the day, where we're at right now is USC is in. If Oregon knocks off Oregon State, we will get Oregon versus USC, which honestly I think is the best matchup that we could possibly hope for in the Pac-12 championship. But before turning that page, let's talk a little bit about USC and UCLA. A great win, obviously, for USC. They continue to move the ball at just this crazy pace in which they're just putting up huge numbers every single week. You go through their box scores, it's basically 500 yards every week, a 600-yard game here, another 500-yard game, and it's just been really impressive. And in this one, Caleb Williams had 500 total yards of offense by himself, added 3 touchdowns as well. He was just very good and very in control of this game. It felt like at times he was making some just absurd throws. At other times, it felt like he was getting away with some absurd throws. But at the end of the day, only 1 turnover. And he got the job done. He continued to move their offense extremely efficiently. Jordan Addison was phenomenal. 11 catches, 178 yards, and a touchdown. You saw Kyle Ford, a former 5-star wide receiver prospect. He had 73 yards and a touchdown. He performed extremely well. Those two guys really stole the show along with their running back. And this was something that I felt like was a huge concern going into this game against UCLA because USC had found ways to run the ball very effectively with Travis Dye at running back, but now they had to turn the page because Dye's done for the year. Now it's Austin Jones, their other transfer running back. And Jones is a guy who I think when you look at him, you go, okay, he's had moments this year, but can he be the lead back? And he answered that question emphatically in this one. 21 carries, 120 yards, 2 touchdowns. He also added 4 catches for 57 yards. He had a great game. He was very effective and pretty much exactly what they needed to win this game against UCLA. Also, you got to talk about the fact that their turnover margin continues to get very freaky. As USC is now plus 21 in turnover margin. They've forced 25 turnovers and they've only lost 4. That plus 21 margin is first in the entire nation. But even bigger than that, the second team is only at plus 14. So USC is basically just lapping the field right now as far as turnover margin goes. It's been incredible to watch. And it seems like every single game this happens. And in this one, it was Dorian Thompson-Robinson who just continued to turn the ball over. He had 4 turnovers to go along with 6 touchdowns. So he played, a really good game in some regards, but then a really bad game in others. And those turnovers really cost UCLA and gave USC a great opportunity to win this game on the road, in quotes, on the road, since I know it was in LA. But I think that, looking at this game, it becomes very apparent that USC is going to be very tough to stop, but USC is also extremely susceptible defensively. And we've been saying this all year, but the question is it going to make them pay? Is the defense going to make them pay? It did once this year against Utah, but going forward, it's going to be something to keep an eye on for sure. And now that's where we turn the page a little bit to this Notre Dame versus USC matchup. One that I'm really excited about, really excited to see kind of how USC steps up to this challenge because Notre Dame has definitely looked a lot better during the second half of the season after a very, very rocky start to the Marcus Freeman era. So right now, I think let's go through a couple stats that I think are going to matter in this one. USC 68th in the country in run defense. They give up 148 yards per game. On the flip side, Notre Dame is 36th in the country running the football. They run for 191 yards per game, but I think the key thing to look at is what Notre Dame has done in their last 8 games. Notre Dame has ran for at least 223 yards in 6 of those last 8 games. And that's pretty much, the 2 that they didn't were the narrow loss to Stanford and the narrow win over Navy. So now you're sitting here and going, okay, so Notre Dame's going to want to run the football. When they have run the football effectively, they've been very difficult to beat, especially during this second half run here. And for USC, they've allowed at least 135 yards in all but 2 games this season. This basically means that Notre Dame is at least getting 135 yards in this one. No doubt about it. I'm not worried about them getting to that number. Question is, can they get to 223 yards? And I think that's all going to come down to game flow. But to me, Notre Dame needs to reach that number because they need to find a way to control the time of possession, find the ability to move the chains. And for them to do that, it has to go back to that run game. For me, going into this one, I think they get to that 223-yard number. And I think that gives them a chance to win this game. Next on the agenda, as far as stats that matter for me, Notre Dame has not seen an offense like USC's in the last 2 months. I know they played Ohio State and North Carolina this year, 2 very good offenses. Don't get me wrong. Ohio State was the first game of the year. Ohio State clearly was not, playing great in that one in my eyes. I think you're still kind of feeling yourself out in the first week, but Notre Dame was up to that challenge. North Carolina put up a lot of numbers, but Notre Dame smashed North Carolina in that one. But then it's been 2 months of playing very inconsistent offenses, and Notre Dame has feasted on that. I don't think they're going to feast on this USC offense by any means. The Trojans have posted at least 515 yards of offense and 41 points in 5 straight games. That's tough. Now, on the flip side, USC hasn't faced a defense quite like Notre Dame's. And Notre Dame is 17th. USC has faced Utah, which is a top 25 defense. So they've been tested a little bit. Oregon State also right in the mix for being a top 25 defense as well. But I think Notre Dame's is something different. I do think they'll get challenged in that regard on the offensive side. So something's got to give here, right? Strength versus strength. What's going to give? I think in my eyes, it's safe to kind of temper your expectations for how well USC is going to play offensively. Like, I don't see them putting up 550 yards in this game. But I do think they'll be somewhere around 400 yards, and I think that gives them an opportunity to score in the 30s. Somewhere in the 30s. And in my eyes, I think USC would like this game to be played in the 40s, whereas Notre Dame would like this game to be played in the 20s. So it's going to be somewhere right in the middle. But in general, I do think USC will have the ability to move the football, but they'll get tested more than they have during Pac-12 play especially. The other area to look at here, Notre Dame 68th in turnover margin. I just mentioned earlier, USC is on historic pace turnover margin-wise with a plus 21 turnover margin. That could be a problem. If Notre Dame starts turning the ball over, getting loose with the football, USC forces some turnovers, that's going to be an issue. And that will absolutely cost Notre Dame this game. They cannot lose the turnover battle. Finally, let's talk third down conversion just slightly here. USC second in the entire nation in third down conversion. Notre Dame is 29th in the country in third down conversion defense. I think this is a big pivot stat right here. I think that this something has to give here. I think USC's got to find a way to be in that high 40s percentile as far as converting third downs, whereas Notre Dame would like USC to be in that 30% range. I think that's going to be a huge key in this game as to whether USC can sustain drives or not, and whether Notre Dame's defense can get off the field and get back to running the football and controlling the time of possession. So going into this game, USC is a 5.5-point favorite. The over-under is 64.5. I've been thinking long and hard about this one, guys. I really think this is going to be a good game, though, and I think that's too many points for USC. So I'm going to take USC to win, but I think the score will be something like 33-31, which means I'm taking Notre Dame with the points here. I also like a push, basically, slight under here in this one. But I think overall, this is going to be a really good game. I think it'll be played in the low 30s. Both teams will be ready to go. Both teams have a lot of momentum right now in this huge rivalry game. But I think USC survives this one against the Fighting Irish. So that's it for this week. I will have 2 bet episodes coming at the end of the week for Friday and Saturday bets. But outside of that, thanks for listening to Crystal Ball College Football.